The greatest obstacle to discovery isn't ignorance, it's the illusion of knowledge. Keep the doors open to new information. All this stuff needs to be trained. Is that amazing or what? I'm blown away. People think they know. In order to operate and move forward, you have to believe you know what you're doing, right? Because if you don't believe you know what you're doing, how are you going to move forward? Your body is a unit, not individual parts working together. All things work and function simultaneously in a harmonious rhythm that adapts in real time. This makes the fascia system arguably the body's largest sensory organ. Fascia tissue behaves based on the velocity of the load. There's only one place in the whole world where you move like you do at the gym, and that's the gym. You can take action, but you're going to hesitate, blah, 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 blah. What an amazing thing we are living in. Let's do our best to never take it for granted. Bing, bang, pow. Man, that was a lot. Ain't nothing to it but to do it. How's everybody doing out there? There we go. Woo, it's getting warm already. Broke me a little sweat. So what? So that means we're going to open up this cold can. We're going to cool ourselves down with the ever incredible liquid death. I'm thankful I started doing this. It's been nice. This is a nice treat. I also have some rice waiting for me, which I'm a big fan of rice. Quite tasty. Carbohydrate, a little butter, a little salt. That's how I like it. A lot of people cook up the rice. They're using, actually I want to start doing it if I can remember. Or maybe I should put it on my list. But using chicken stock or something with some bone broth in there, cooking it with that. I think that sounds pretty good. Let's get into this. Starting off with the hot buttons. Episode 41, the fascial system, part 2. Super pumped. Super Pump 250. That was old. If you're not familiar with the Super Pump 250, that was a OG pre-workout. And there was a guy that he used to work with, and that was his jam. He was about to lift. He got out the Super Pump 250. I never got into it, but never forgot the name. You know what I mean? Goal of this episode is go deeper into the fascial system. Heck yeah. Change how you think about the mechanical function of your body. Change how you think about the mechanical function of your body. Because, we were born into the levers and levers and levers thing going on with Newtonian physics. That sounds like I know what I'm talking about. You got muscles, and then those muscles pull on the bones, and that's how the body works. Well, no, not really. I mean, that's a component to some degree, but really the muscle is transferring force. One of the things what the muscles are doing is transferring force into the connective tissue. And I just watched a video yesterday, and not just linearly, like a bicep curling, and that force is transferred linearly into the joint, but that tension also creates force around all that fascia into the tricep, into the shoulder, into everything. That's why all this stuff is starting to make sense. We always thought it was just neural drive, right? You're doing a pull-up or you're pulling on something hard, and if you focus on getting a harder fist contraction, squeezing the bar harder, well, then you actually perform better and you can lift more weight. Well, how does that make sense? Must be the nervous system. But also the whole fascial system in the arm, all the way, not just to the shoulder, but throughout your entire body, creates more tension and stiffness and capacity to lift. And this thing is getting exciting. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to have some fun today. If you're interested in how the body works, if you'd like to learn about updating information about the way the body moves, man, we're doing it. We're doing it right now because we've been thinking a certain way. We were born into this thinking of, and I'm not knocking it, man. The people that went before us, incredible amount of work. It's incredible what they left us with, and things need to get updated. And the more we learn, the better lives we can live, hopefully. So let's keep moving. Outline of topics. We got updates. We got before we get started. And we're going to go to the book. And then we'll have some final thoughts. So I'm going to be reading from a book today and throwing in my comments as we go. Hopefully more book, less comments. Oh, you guys don't think that was funny, huh? Me neither. I think my button activity's been a lot less lately, and we're going to get that going again today. How about that? There we go. That's what we're looking for. All right, let's get into these updates. I don't have a golf update. I don't remember what happened last Sunday, but I did not watch any golf. I don't think it was on. I watched tennis one of these Sundays. And this last Sunday, I don't think there was any golf on. So I got any golf updates. The tennis was interesting. I think it was Wimbledon. Tigers, second best record in Major League Baseball. Well, you know what that deserves? God. Oh, my God. Second best record in Major League Baseball. You can chop that up, Nathan, if you want. Yeah, so who's first? The Brewers are first. And I learned something new today because I was pulling this out. I knew I was going to give a little record on the Tigers because that's fun to watch and follow along. I found out what L10 is, and that's last 10 games. See, I didn't know that. I don't have a big sports background. Maybe that's common knowledge if you play baseball or whatever. It seems like a newer thing. I don't remember seeing it before. But L10, last 10 games. The Tigers in the last 10 games are 7-3. That's why they kind of dropped out of number one. When the Brewers went 10-0. So the last 10 games, the Brewers have not lost. Last 10 games, the Tigers have won 3 out of 7. Not awesome. Weather's been hot and rainy. That's what it's been around here. Reminds me of Florida. And subscriber update. Email 62. YouTube goes from 127 to technically 132. It went up before I got started. It was 131 this morning, 132. So we're growing daily. Applause for that. Spotify goes from 31 to 34. Spotify's making a move out there. Definitely looking to double Apple eventually, I would imagine. 23 for Apple. No movement on Apple, per usual on the Apple. Reminder to you guys out there, get your questions to Dennis@DennisFenrich.com. Haven't had a question in a long time. You know, those were fun in the beginning. All right, guys. Here we go. Buckle your seatbelts. If you're not buckled up already, you should be. All right? Physically and mentally. That's what I'm saying. Before we get started, here we go. The book, Fascial Training in Application, Applying the New Science of Speed, Power, and Injury Prevention. So this book comes from the new program we launched at North Industry. It's a youth athletic training program called the Parisi Speed School. We have an affiliation with these guys. I came across these guys. God, I'm sweating. From the Fascial stuff. And this guy that I'm kind of learning from, one of the people, Bill Parisi, he started this speed school. And he also wrote a book called Fascial Training and Application, which is the book we're going to dive into today. It is written towards more athletic people. So more athletes, people out there competing in a sport and learning how to move better and faster using fascial training. So it's a cool book. I read from some of it the first time around, and we're going to go into it a little bit more today. I'm going to do one more on this book. Now, the book, there's another chapter that I like and I wanted to talk about. We'll do that in the next piece of this series here. So we'll have 3 on this book. The rest of the book is then like more technical application into your training, right? How do you move better? How do you improve agility? How does this apply to strength training? How does it apply? And, I stay out of the details, right? But if you want to get into the details, you can get the book yourself. I'll say the name again. I think our friend Nathan's going to put it up over here in our black box. The book. Where is the book? Fascial Training and Application, Applying the New Science of Speed, Power, and Injury Prevention. Good book. It's as simple as it can get, right? This is pretty somewhat technical stuff. This guy, Bill, he does a really, really good job of taking complex ideas and turning them into much more easily understandable concepts. And so I think you could follow the book. If you don't have a background in this, I think you could read it, just kind of gloss over the technical stuff and because he does a really good job of making analogies. And I think the whole book, he runs an analogy to a car through there, which is really cool. All right, what else we got out here before we get started? We got breaks down the mat. So that next episode, the third one, it breaks down the major movement patterns of our body and ties it into an evolutionary perspective. And it's a totally cool chapter. I'm looking forward to covering that. The rest is, I already said all that. We do have a definition that's going to come up. I'm going to save it till we get there, but I need to set this aside so I can find it. And yeah, that's the jam. That is the jam, guys. All right, let's do this. Let's go to the book and get a drink. I want to murder the thirst for a second here. Wow. What are you doing right now? You driving? You sitting there listening? You watching? If you're watching, you're seeing me fidget around a lot. That's what you're seeing. I'm literally breaking out into a sweat. That's one thing about getting acclimated to the summer, which happens to me. I work, the gym doesn't have air conditioning. So when I go and I work out, I'm working out in the summer heat. And then when I coach and I'm at the gym, I get acclimated to the summer. But it does cause you to sweat more than you normally would. But it also helps you lean out. I've definitely noticed that. Like, there's a reason why your hunger drops in the summer. And I don't know if anybody's ever shown this scientifically with a double-blind placebo-controlled study, but my speculation is that you are mobilizing body fat stores more easily when it's high, and therefore your hunger response drops. Just a theory. Just a theory. All right, we're going to be doing some serious reading here today. We got some paragraphs of stuff to go through. The man himself, Bill Parisi. Here we go. Plants versus machines. The other reason I call fascia-aware training a new science is that our pre-existing concept of how the body works is one of the biggest challenges we have to overcome in order to move forward. As author and historian Daniel Boorstin said, the greatest obstacle to discovery isn't ignorance, it's the illusion of knowledge. For as long as we've been studying human anatomy, we've been trained to think of the body as a machine. Oh, maybe you guys don't know that I'm out of the quote. All right, let me read the quote and then I'll tell you when it's done. It's one sentence. The greatest obstacle to discovery isn't ignorance, it's the illusion of knowledge. And that's a very, very true statement, right? Like, people think they know. And in order to operate and move forward, you have to believe you know what you're doing, right? Because if you don't believe you know what you're doing, how are you going to move forward, right? You could take action, but you're going to hesitate, it's blah, 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 blah. So we move with confidence when we know what we're doing, quote unquote, know. And so that becomes the obstacle to updating our thinking, because what does that mean now? Now I don't know exactly how I'm supposed to move forward. What do I do with this information? So typically what people will do is they'll deny the information, right? Especially if you've built an entire career, like I'm thinking from a scientific perspective, right? Like, I'm the guy who knows everything about, muscle anatomy and bones and ligaments. I'm saying it's not me, but somebody. And now you're telling me there's this new thing that says that's not as important as it was. Well, that just can't be true because I already know everything over here. So it happens to us all. It's hard to update our knowledge at certain times because it puts us into the unknown, and the unknown is going to cause a physiological response of, a little bit of stress, right? And so it becomes really, really important as a human, especially if you're a scientist, to keep the doors open to new information and examine them without the idea that it's wrong right off the bat because you don't know what it is. Anyways, back to the book. This is Bill, quotes over. For as long as we've been studying I wish there was a better way to hold this book. But there ain't, so let's keep going. Well, here we go. For as long as we've been studying human anatomy, we've been trained to think of the body as a machine made of component parts. We are tested on our ability to identify distinct muscles based on their origin and insertion points. And we've been taught to think of movement in Newtonian terms, or levers and link action, where one bone remains still while an adjacent bone is articulated by muscles that shorten via concentric force. While this model gives us useful language for talking about the human body, it is by nature artificial. It's the illusion of knowledge. So it's this thinking, essentially, that we lay over when we think about the human body. This is a hard pill to swallow when you spent your entire education and professional career organizing your concept of human movement around its certainty. But the simplified Newtonian model of how we move and produce force in three-dimensional space is incomplete. In reality, Both the anchor bone and action bone of a link action sequence are moving along with all of the other structures and tissues in the body. The differences between agonist and antagonist muscles dissolve when they co-contract to create stability and produce force. So agonist, like my bicep is the agonist, and the antagonistic, the one working against it, would be my tricep. And movement is always happening in all three planes in relation to gravity, ground reaction force, and momentum. Additionally, muscles, tendons, and joint capsules don't have clearly separated origins and endpoints. They are not individual parts that can be assembled like Lego bricks. They merge together in a seamless continuum without boundaries. The tissues of a joint capsule progressively turn into tendon, which gradually intersects with the dense sheaths of fascia surrounding each muscle, which then merges into other layers of deep fascia that interpenetrate and encase each individual muscle, fascicle, fiber, and nerve. And all of those collagen based tissues form a single interconnected suspension network head to toe. So there's a lot going on in there. Basically, what he's saying is the body operates it as a unit, and the thing that allows it to do that is the fascia system, right? So you have a body, and if you just think about yourself moving through space, you don't think about moving each individual joint or articulating your hands to open up or your phalanges on the ground adjusting to the floor or wherever you're at. All you do is visualize the movement, and then your body fills in the gap because it doesn't see individual parts. It works through one system, and that system that is tying it all together physically is that fascia system, along with the nervous system, of course. So everything's connected, basically, and it's this fascia system that's going to do that. All right. What is this? So what I do is I put these little notes in here, and I'm trying to decipher what am I saying here. Read. Oh yeah, okay. I'm supposed to read this section on reaction wood. So this is an interesting point. It's going to talk about how trees adapt. All right, and then he's going to talk about why it's relevant. All right, here we go. If you give an arboreal example, he does kind of like technical words. I don't know exactly what arboreal means, but I know it's tied to trees. I'll give you an arboreal example. As trees grow, their limbs continually sway in response to the constantly variable loading force of wind. The stress of this submaximal three-dimensional loading is dispersed throughout the limbs and trunk of the tree all the way down to the roots. Trees respond to this continually variable loading by growing what is called reaction wood, aka stress wood. Reaction/stress wood is mechanically different than structural wood in terms of cellulose content and how it is organized. The cellulose fibers in reaction wood form a triple helix pattern along the directional lines of stress in which the same way collagen fibers arrange themselves in fascia tissue. The development of reaction wood is an adaptation that allows trees to grow in controlled ways in order to reach the best sunlight from wherever they are and still handle the variable loads of wind, snow, and rain. Adapting to this multi-dimensional loading is how trees become strong enough to support their own weight as they grow larger in oppositions. So basically, wind blows, stress happens, and the tree adapts by developing a different kind of wood that creates this three-dimensional stability. So the lines of force, as I talk about the gym a lot, don't all run in the same direction. They run in multiple directions, three-dimensionally, and that creates this ability for a tree to have a lean, for its branches to grow in all different kind of directions. And without that stress, that external stimulator, well, those reaction woods don't develop, as we'll see now in the next paragraph. In fact, when scientists tried to grow trees in Arizona's fully enclosed Biosphere 2 research facility, which, if you don't know what that is, I don't remember what year it was, early 2000s, a group of scientists got together, they built a whole sphere, and they went and lived in there for, I think it was 2 years, right? So it was, they were trying to work out what would it be like or what would we need to do to be able to go to Mars and build a habitat that humans could live in. So they just built one here on Earth. It was totally cut out from, although I believe they were still using the sun, but they had to pump in their own air, but there was no wind, right? So Biosphere 2 was basically a place that had no wind, and there was people in there living for 2 years. Pretty crazy. Look it up. Okay, I'll start again. In fact, when scientists tried to grow trees in Arizona's fully enclosed Biosphere 2 research facility, they were surprised to find that the biosphere trees grew at a much faster rate than they did in the wild, but they would also collapse before they fully matured because they were never exposed to the stress of wind. As a result, the trees didn't develop the shape stabilizing reaction wood that makes them strong enough to grow. Not surprisingly, the team soon installed fans to stimulate wind. Our bodies work much in the same way. If you want to create a strong, stable biomachine that adapts to its environment and heals quickly, you need to expose it to omnidirectional, multidirectional movement with regular seasonal doses of heavy loading and a healthy amount of sunlight, nutrients, and water. So you need to expose it to multidirectional movement. And the big thing here is, and I don't think I read about it so much in there, it's not just, when we say loading, I already know where your brain's going. If you're working out, you're seeing yourself deadlift. You're seeing yourself do a bench press. You're seeing yourself do a back squat. Great, okay? And that's going to load along those lines of force. But if you're not loading in odd positions, right? Because we don't move. When you're at the gym, there's only one place in the whole world where you move like you do at the gym, and that's the gym. The rest of the time, you're bending over in different positions and you're going down on one knee and you're reaching up and standing on one foot and stretching across to grab the dish off the top of the shelf there. You're moving in many, many different patterns. And if you don't train those patterns, most people, they go to the gym. Well, here's what happens. They lay down, not a lot of stress. They wake up and they go sit somewhere, not a lot of stress. And then they go to the gym and then they create stress like a robot. And then they go home and they sit and then they lay down again. So what's happening is these movement patterns are getting way overdeveloped and the normal functioning patterns are getting underdeveloped, and you're ending up in pain, as we talked about in the last podcast on fascia. 80% of your pain is coming out of your fascia system, not your muscle tissue, because there's 6 to 10 times more receptors in there. It is your proprioception feedback system for the most part. And those tissues that aren't getting moved properly, they're getting dense, they're getting kind of junky. He's going to talk about how they develop. We're going to go over that in a second. They're just not as functional, and they start to hurt because they're just not as strong. They're not getting built correctly. They're not getting the stimulation that they need. And so we need to move in these omnidirectional, multidirectional patterns with odd loading to really develop the entire system. Otherwise, it ends up with very strong lines of force in certain places and then big gaps and weaknesses in others. And that's why you can have a 400 pound deadlift and bend over and grab your sock in the morning and bow, you get a strain, right? Makes no sense. You're pulling 200, 300 pounds off the floor, but you can't bend over and get your sock without something happening. Here is why. All right, back to the book. All right, so these are, this is cool. So that was kind of setting things up, talking about why it's important, how it works. This is going to go into the more details of the fascia system, some of the minutia, and how it's being started to be broken down and looked at in these individual components so we can get a better understanding of it. All right, so here we go. First off, extracellular matrix, which is a sick word. You know what I mean? Listen, you're out there, you talk with your friends, you say something about fascia, and they're like, well, I don't know about that fascia. You go, you know what? Extracellular matrix. What are they going to say? You're going to sound like you know what you're talking about. The ECM for short. Here we go. Considered in the simplest of terms, fascia tissue consists of 2 key components: the extracellular matrix, ECM, and fibroblast cells. The ECM provides a fluid and fiber-based structural scaffolding for everything in your body. It is also neurologically wired to enable biochemical signaling between all cells and systems. Wow. As the name indicates, it constitutes everything outside of the cells, extracellular, outside the cells. It is a pressurized hydraulic system that consists of a thick, viscous fluid, viscous, viscose fluid called ground substance mixed with triple helix shaped strands of protein fibers, collagen, elastin, reticulin, along with protoglycans and water. Okay, I know, it's a mouthful. All right, what is he saying here? First of all, I want to say this. I got this yesterday watching a video on Fascial. We're whatever, 60, 70, 80% water, right? Here's the point the guy said. He said, how come that's not all at your feet right now? If we're 60, 70% water, how come it all has not just traveled right down to your feet? Because you have a fascia system or an extracellular matrix that is creating and holding through a web of pockets the fluids where they need to be, all right? And it's not just a passive system that's just holding it there. And it's going to get into some of this stuff. It's able to create tension in those fluids. It's able to create stiffness in the fluid. And man, this stuff is fascinating. It's unbelievable that it totally got missed in the beginning, but it makes sense. This whole system, when you're dead, does not work at all. And so what are autopsies? What are we looking at? We're looking at cadavers, right? You're not cutting open and looking at live people for the most part. At least back then when things started, cadaver is the way to go because you don't have to put it back together. Where is it? God dang it, man. I'm not getting these buttons right. That's funny. I don't know. Yes, that's funny stuff. All right. Don't lose your train of thought, Dennis. What in the world was I saying? Dang it. Extracellular matrix. So this extracellular matrix is keeping your water. All right, so there was a lot in this one, right? We got triple helix-shaped strands of protein fibers. That's collagen, elastin, and reticulin, along with proteoglycans. Oh, there it is. All right, so what the heck is a proteoglycan? Heck if I know, but I went and got the definition. Here we go. Definition, proteoglycans. These, man, I shortened it way up. It was way more information. Are linear polysaccharides. Oh my God, this definition isn't even that good. These gag chains are linear polysaccharides and proteoglycans. Proteoglycans are crucial for maintaining the structural integrity and function of tissues, particularly in connective tissues like cartilage. All right, so that's not exactly what a proteoglycan is. It's a form of carbohydrate, if I remember correctly. I didn't get the exact definition. I got what it does. But anyways, hopefully I'm not losing you guys on this. Like I lost myself. So there's this extracellular matrix and it holds water, and you need to know that to understand some of the stuff that's coming. All right. So after that, you got fibroblasts, more technical stuff. It's funny. I'm reading this and I'm like, oh, this isn't that complicated. Then I'm reading it like out loud and I'm like, oh yeah, like most people are going to be like, what is this dude talking about? All right. So here we go. Fibroblasts. There are, of course, a wide variety of cells in fascia tissue that each have different roles, but fibroblast cells are the star of the remodeling show. They are the maintenance workers that handle the daily construction and remodeling of the ECM. They are the architects and caretakers. Fibroblast cells produce protein fibers, collagen and elastin, in the ECM like tiny micro spiders spinning out webs made of fiber and chemicals wherever they go. They also produce an enzyme called collagenase, which eliminates unneeded or damaged collagen, allowing them to remove and rebuild tissues on a supply and demand basis. Okay, that was a lot more digestible. So you got your ECM, you got the collagen system itself. There's basically, you have collagen and fibroblasts make up that majority of it. Some of the cells are going to come from nerve endings. In proportion. There's a ton of them, but in proportion to the total tissue amount, the collagen makes up the most, and then the fibroblasts are going to come in second as an actual cell. The fibroblasts have two major roles. They remodel, they lay down new collagen based on the forces that they're encountering or the signal they're getting from the environment, And they also lay down an enzyme that breaks down the old collagen so it can actually remodel, right? It's not just putting down new stuff. So basically, if you sat for 20 years and you end up with this forward head posture and these shoulders that are internally rotated, well, your collagen system kind of got mapped or built like that. But the good news is, if you start getting out of that position, you'll lay down new stuff and the old stuff will get broken down and reused for new stuff. So that's what the fibroblasts are doing. All right, that was good. That made sense. I might have to revisit the proteoglycans in the next podcast for you guys. God, some of these words. Hey? Okay, so now we got collagen fibers and cross-links. So we talked about the matrix itself, the fascia system itself. We talked about what the fibroblast cells are doing. And now we're going to talk about the structure of this fascia system to a little bit, all right? Collagen fibers and cross-links. Consisting of 3 polypeptide chains arranged in a triple helix strand. Whatever, you don't have to know it. Collagen is the most abundant protein in the body. While more than 20 different subtypes of collagen have been identified, type 1 collagen is the most common. Type 1 collagen fibers have extremely high tensile strength and are responsible for much of the elastic storage and recoil properties of the fascia. In fact, type 1 collagen fibers have such high tensile strength that they barely stretch at all. As a result, the elastic springiness of fascia tissues comes from a wavy crimp in the fibers, which is similar to the coils of a spring. In healthy fascia tissues, collagen fibers have a crisp series of crimps arranged in a lattice-like orientation with a 55 to 63 degree angle relative to the associated muscle fibers. You don't have to know all that, whatever the heck that means. What you need to know is you get like a kind of a hard strand that's kind of stiff, but then you end up with this lattice crossing. Think of like the white picket fence that has the lattice that's crossing over and over. What gets laid down between those stiffer fibers, and that's where you get this capacity for the stretch shorten reflex and the ability to put and get force or tension into the system and store it for like a rebound effect, like a basketball hitting the ground, the force of the ball going down gets absorbed into the rubber, and then it springs itself back off. Your fascia system does the same thing. All right, so that was collagen fibers and cross-links, and he goes on a little bit more, and he talks about, well, what if you're aging or not getting good stimulation or signal from the environment for movement? In aged tissues or tissues that have been immobilized by injury or a sedentary lifestyle, the arrangement of these collagen fibers becomes disorganized, less wavy, and it has less crimp formation. This disorganized collagen architecture mesh, which naturally happens as we age, results in the loss of springiness and an increased occurrence of injury. So basically, it's not structured as well, and it becomes weak and more likely to get hurt. Spring stiffness in fascia tissue is further increased by the way collagen fibers are connected to each other within the matrix. These connections are known as enzymatic crosslinks, and they are created by the enzyme lysyl oxidase in combination with movement. Dynamic, high-velocity movements prompt the development of more crosslinks, which increase spring stiffness. Nice. I think this one had a ton of words I couldn't even say. What does it say here? I got a little note for myself. My note says, I'll read this. All right, guys. So this section right in here, it's just by the name of it, you're going to know it's going to be a head full here. Viscoelastic non-Newtonian fluids. Okay. Now, I would totally skip this, but it's so critical to understanding what's going on with the water in the fascia system. So just bear with me. Okay. I'm just going to read it, and then I'm going to do my best to explain. But if you can ignore the technical stuff and just pick up on the gist of it, it's really unbelievable. When I first read this, I didn't believe it, and I had to look it up online like he suggests, and it was like, whoa, I didn't even know that was a thing. So it's a really cool section. I want you guys to know it. I want to share it with you, but it is pretty technical, and it's a long read. So just bear with me, but I think at the end of this little piece here, I think you're going to be like as blown away as I was. All right. Viscoelastic non-Newtonian fluids. I will read quickly. In addition to fibrous Fibrous protein strands of collagen and elastin, the other major component of the ECM, is a thick, viscous fluid called ground substance, which is mostly water containing proteoglycans and other sugar protein complexes. Ground substance is a clear, colorless, gel like fluid that constitutes up to 80% of the ECM volume. It contains other chemicals like, I couldn't even say this, hyaluronic acid, now called hyalurononic acid, and lubricin. Hyaluronan, Hyaluronan. That's definitely ronin. Hyaluronan plays an especially important role in the extracellular matrix as a natural polysaccharide carbohydrate molecule. Hyaluronan has the unique ability to attract and retain water, giving it a crucial lubricating role in fascia tissues by allowing adjacent tissues to slide smoothly against each other and significantly increase the ECM's resistance to compression. So you got this gel-like fluid inside the ECM. It's, it's water, but it's got these polysaccharides in there that are going to give it a different property, and we're going to talk about that right now. This combination of thick, viscous fluid interwoven with cable-like collagen fibers creates a viscoelastic composite material, which is called a colloid. I could say that right. That gives fascia the properties of non-Newtonian fluid. And here we go. What is a non-Newtonian fluid? Here we go. That's where I was blown away. I'm glad you asked because the explanation gets weird. Unlike common Newtonian fluids like water, which have a constant rate of flow regardless of how much stress you apply to them, non-Newtonian fluids behave like a liquid when you apply a slow, steady shear force to them, but instantly transform into a solid when they encounter a sudden force or impact. Like what? Like what? You're going to have to look this up if you're not driving. It's an abstract molecular concept, but if you want to see non-Newtonian fluid in action, all you need to do is run a quick YouTube search for oobleck, which is Oobleck, oobleck, a non-Newtonian substance named after a Dr. Seuss story, and you will see a mind-bending array of entertainment. And he's got in parentheses here. It says, I'll wait. So he's assuming you're going to go take a look. I did. And I was like, what? Oobleck can be made in your kitchen by mixing 2 parts cornstarch with 1 part water. If you drag your hand slowly through an oobleck-filled swimming pool, it will feel like stirring a vat of thick, cold gravy. But if you drop a watermelon into that same swimming pool from the roof of your garage, it will explode on the surface as if it were hitting a concrete driveway. This happens because the grains of cornstarch suspended in the water link up and solidify when they're smashed together rapidly. A high velocity impact traps the water molecules between these grains of cornstarch and temporarily transforms them into a semi-solid sheet-like composite. If you go look when you get a chance, it's wild to watch. There wasn't actually a ton of videos. The one I remember distinctly was they did like maybe like 6x6 square space. They built like a box on the ground there, and they put the oobleck in there, and they were walking through it. It's all orange. They colored it orange, and they would jump up and then land on it, and it didn't move. I mean, it's wild to see. I didn't even know this stuff existed. I won't get into physics because to me, it's no different than, doing a belly smack into a pool, right? Yeah, water moves, but if enough velocity is going into it, it can't move fast enough. And so it ends up becoming hard. Now, I think this is different, but it's another way to think about it. The ECM has these same viscoelastic properties due to a blend of protein fibers and ground substance. Fast movements with short contact times, like jumping rope, prompt fascia tissues to act as a stiff spring in response to the high velocity impact, while slower movements, like holding a yoga stretch, will prompt fascia tissues to soften and become more pliable. In terms of athletic performance, there are positives and negatives associated with both velocities, which he discusses in chapter 4. So, like, you need your ECM, you need your fascia to be able to do both. But I think the majority of people, if they're doing fitness, they're doing more slower, controlled, lifting, they're doing more slower controlled static stretching, and we're missing a lot of this ballistic type, faster impact stiffness, which creates a different force into the fascia system and becomes more robust and more capable of handling and creating stiffness in the tissues and joints. Because where are you going to get power from, right? If you're going to throw a ball fast, you better be able to create some speed and stiffness. If you're going to jump rope, you need to be able to create speed and stiffness in your foot, calf, ankle complex, whole body really, because that force is going to be transferred through your whole body. You want to go running, you need to create stiffness in your foot, right? Like all this stuff needs to be trained. And if we're not doing it, if we're just lifting weights or just doing conditioning work, then we're missing a huge component of movement. And yes, we're doing good, but hey, we could do better, right? That's what this podcast is all about, doing better. All right, so we're going to keep on rolling here. I'm going to skip a bunch of this stuff because it's just like force and everything. Yeah, we're almost there. Last read. All right, we got a little bit to go. It's going to break down the types of fascia because there's a few different layers of this stuff, all right? Types of fascia. While fascia is recognized as a single interconnected system, there are 4 types of fascia tissue that are relevant for athletes, performance coaches, and sports medicine professionals. They are superficial fascia, deep fascia, visceral fascia, and the connective tissues of tendons, ligaments, and aponeurosis. Their differences are primarily distinguished by the density and directional alignment of the collagen fibers, as well as their fluid content and mechanical role in the body. Understanding the mechanics of these properties is essential for creating targeted training programs that optimize performance and reduce risk. Viscoelasticity gives fascia tissue 3 significant mechanical properties. 1, elasticity, the ability for tissues to store and release kinetic energy. Viscosity, the ability for tissues to slide against each other. Plasticity, the ability for tissues to reshape along lines of stress. All right, so that was types of fascia. And he's going to talk about the 4 different types. Superficial fascia. So now, all right, so there's 4 different types, and he's going to break down each different type, which is really interesting. Super interesting. Superficial fascia. You can probably guess, where's it going to be? It's going to be closer to the surface. Superficial fascia is a loose layer of areolar tissue directly beneath your skin. It connects this. Don't get stuck in me getting stuck on a word. It's directly beneath your skin is the key point here. It connects the skin to underlying bones and deep fascial layers. It is a higher volume of elastin fibers that allow it to stretch and regain its original shape. The viscoelastic properties of superficial fascia buffer your skin from the muscles and other deep fascial layers and allow for a smooth sliding action between them. It is characterized by a relatively low density of collagen fibers that tend to be multidirectional or irregular in alignment. Think about it, right? So you're going to need a different layer of collagen because your muscles are moving a lot, but the skin kind of stays stationary, right? It's not, you don't see your skin sliding around on the surface there because everything underneath is kind of sliding around and it needs to stay stationary. So it's a little bit, it's softer and it's built to allow things to slide underneath it, basically. Visceral fascia. Visceral fascia surrounds and suspends your internal organs within their respective cavities, protecting and wrapping them in multiple layers of connective tissue and stabilizing them from the shock of movement and impact. Given this important shock absorption role, visceral fascia is less extensible than superficial fascia because it needs to maintain a consistent level of tone that optimizes healthy organ function. All right, so this part of your fascia system needs to hold things in place, right? You don't want your organs bouncing around. That'd be bad, right? If your heart kept just like bumping into your lungs all the time. So so you got what's underneath the skin. We're going a little bit deeper. What's surrounding your organs? Because there's no empty space in your body, right? There needs to be something there, and fascia is there. Deep fascia. Deep fascia is a thick, highly fibrous internal bodysuit that surrounds, penetrates, and connects every muscle in your body. Deep fascia tissues connect tendons. Oh, man, these words, man. Reticula. Retinacula. I want to say reticula, but it is not. Reticula, joint capsules, and septa, septa. They also surround all of the bones, nerves, and blood vessels in the body. It is the most extensive form of fascia in the body. It is like an internal wetsuit that includes broad sheets of connective tissue, aponeuroses. Aponeuroses, you have two major ones. You got one, your low back is an aponeuroses. So it's a very thick, dense layer of connective tissue that ties a bunch of muscle in the body together. Basically, your low back goes up into your, this kind of area down there. You got them under your feet. Your plantar fascia is essentially an aponeuroses. It is like an internal wetsuit that includes broad sheets of connective tissue, aponeuroses, as well as the myofascial tissue surrounding, penetrating your muscles. This network of deep fascia tissue enables lateral transfer of force across multiple joint structures through muscle co-contraction, which we'll explore in chapters 3 and 4. Muscles don't work independently. They co-contract to create stiffness and movement. Research has shown that muscles transmit much of their contraction force into adjacent muscles, including antagonistic muscles that are co-contracted to increase stability and then transfer that combined force to the tendons. I'll read that again because this changes the way you think about how your muscles work. Again, we think I flex my bicep, that is to flex my lower arm. Okay? And that's what that's doing. No. Okay? That is not all it's doing. I'll read it again. Research has shown that muscles transmit much of their contraction force into adjacent muscles. So when I contract my bicep, the force isn't just acting on the bone, it's transferring through the fascial system into all the adjacent muscles, including antagonistic muscles that are co-contracted to increase stability. Bicep transfers force also into my tricep and then transfers that combined force into the tendons. And then that combined force is what is transferred into the tendons. And of course, right, we just had this idea that, hey, I flex my bicep and my nervous system tells my tricep what to do. No. Yes, that's happening, but also localized in the area. The force is being transferred through the fascial system into the tricep as well, vice versa, into the forearm, the shoulder. You mean it all works like one unit? It all works like one unit. That's what it means. And then I'm going to skip a bunch of this stuff because it's like the more technical side. Not that this wasn't too technical. This was fairly technical. More the technical side of like how the forces are adapted to tendons, ligaments, and aponeuroses. Oh, I could have read that. We're doing fine. Nope, something said no. So there's a section on tendons, ligaments, and aponeuroses. And it talks about those in a little bit more detail and what they're kind of consisted of, type 1 fibers or whatever. But we're going to skip past that. We're going to skip past the loading types, tensional loads, compressive loads, shear loads, because that was just more like how the tissue adapts when you're thinking about training. And I just don't think that's really relevant. We're more concerned in general understanding of the fascia system. All right, here we go. The body's largest sensory organ. Research has determined fascia tissues have 6 to 8 times more proprioceptive sensory nerve endings than red muscle. This is SLEP 2017. So proprioceptive is your body's awareness of where it is in space. How is it moving? Where's my arm in relation to anything else? It's that feedback of where the body is in space back to the central nervous system, but also not just feeding up through the brain, the nervous system to the brain. The fascial system is communicating with itself. It knows. You get direct connection from your foot to your glute. There's a direct connection through the fascial system, an awareness, a communication that is going on there that is not going up to the brain and back. Now, there's still some of that going on, but there's a local communication as well. Research has determined that fascia tissues have 6 to 8 times more proprioceptive sensory nerve endings than red muscle, SLEP 2017. This makes the fascia system arguably the body's largest sensory organ. The spindle receptors in muscles, which is a sensor in the muscle, are primarily located in areas where force transfer happens at the muscle tendon unit, the MTU. That's where the muscle and the tendon connect. When it comes to censoring where we are in space and time, the fascia system provides our most important interface. We'll explore this topic more in Chapter 9. So it is a massive sensory organ for us. Okay. And this will be the last thing I read out of the book here. It just kind of ties things together, if I remember correctly. The fascia system is, The fascia system is a body-wide tensile network that surrounds, interweaves between, and interpenetrates all organs, muscles, bones, and nerve fibers. It includes intramuscular and intermuscular myofascial connective tissues, tendons, ligaments, aponeuroses, large sheets of connective tissue, adipose tissue, joint capsules, reticula, wrist and ankle wraps, nervovascular sheaths, and visceral fascia. So basically everything. The fascia tissues are constantly remodeling all lines of load. So this is just a quick review. I'll just do it real quick. Fascia tissues are constantly remodeling along lines of load, impact, pressure, and stress. Every time you drive load through your tissues, fibroblasts organize themselves along the directional lines of tension to provide collagen fibers in the ECM. Next point. While fibroblasts produce collagen fibers and other structural elements of the ECM, movement is what organizes and connects them. This means that all movement matters, for better or worse. Since fascia tissues remodel based on the directional forces they experience, training should match the movement patterns of your sport or position. It's getting more specific. Two more here. The principle of biotensegrity means that focusing on postural and movement hygiene and tissue health is essential for maintaining balance, tensional alignment across the body. Don't sit like a fool all the time. Oh, God, I just got a dang comment. Don't sleep in the exact same position all the time, right? I was working with somebody one time and they kept having this chronic problem. Two people kept having chronic problems in the same hip, and they'd come in and they would move in kind of the same way. And I was like, are you sleeping with your knee up towards your chest? And you always get the look of like, how do you know that? Like I'm spying in their room or something. Well, I'm not. The fascia system is shaping itself to that position. Okay. So if one leg's always straight, or you're putting one up and then one down, or you keep going to these same positions, well, it's going to affect how you move because those fascia systems are being built in those lines. All right. All right. The principles of viscoelasticity mean that fascia tissue behaves based on the velocity of the load it experiences. Fast movements with short contact times prompt fascia to act more as a stiff spring. Slower, sustained movements prompt fascia to become more fluid and pliable. Whew. Bing, bang, pow. Man, that was a lot. I need a drink. Some crickets. Crickets and drinking. I need that. Go give me some rice soon. All right, here we go. Let's wrap this up. Is that amazing or what? I'm blown away. You know, I've been training people and training myself for a long time. And it was probably 7 or 8 years ago when I realized, like, man, I was like, you know, moving like a robot, the way we do, right? Like perfect form, right? You got to understand where perfect form came from. It came from the bodybuilding community. It came from, we need to move in this specific way to target. They needed this perfect form because they were trying to isolate muscle groups to create growth. Okay. That's where that whole perfect form concept came from. All right. Then it moved into, I want to pick up heavy weight, and therefore I need to put my levers in an optimal position to move this load. Okay. That is all great, but we don't move that way the most of the time that we're alive. And we need to get good at moving in normal ways with lighter loads and putting different omnidirectional stresses through the fibers, our collagen system, our fascia system, to maintain joint health. So what I was going to say was 7 or 8 years ago, I started to think like, is moving like this causing some of these joint problems that I'm seeing with people and in myself, right? Like, why is it that I do all the things right? I was a form Nazi. I mean, I came into the bodybuilding world. I came in training like a bodybuilder where form was just the everything. And I've always focused on it, yet I was starting to experience these joint pains. And I started to wonder, like, maybe moving like a robot, but there was nothing to really back it up based on the thinking that we had. Now the answer is here. And it's really cool to, one, be able to share that information, be able to learn it, process it, and then build it into, the program that I run. So some final thoughts. Here we go. Your body is a unit, not individual parts working together. All things work and function simultaneously in a harmonious rhythm that adapts in real time, utilizing these real-time adaptations to create long-term physiological stability and maintenance of life. Everything is a signal that shapes who we are throughout our entire existence. What an amazing thing we are living in. Let's do our best to never take it for granted. So everything all the time is shaping us, physically and mentally, all right? Which leads me to the next episode. Next week, going deep on the mind-body connection. I was at the coffee shop on Sunday, and I was reading still. I'm going through this book again. It's a book on the history of psychology, basically, psychophysical therapy. And I'm just getting a better understanding of this whole mind-body connection. And I'm going to go deep on it next week. I'm excited about it. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm going to do my best to elicit a strong response in whoever's listening to that podcast, because the thoughts behind it, they're pretty heavy, man. They're pretty heavy. So that'll be next week. The fascia system we got Ray Garza coming on here pretty soon. We're challenging to get him coordinated. He's got classes Tuesday evenings, so we're trying to figure that out. Maybe I'm going to cut this on Thursday. We don't know yet. But we got another fascia one coming, third and final one out of the book here. And next week will be mind body, man. I'm looking forward to doing it. It's going to be fun. So anyways, appreciate you guys. If there's anybody you think would be interested in learning about their body and the fascia system, hey, please share this with them. Would appreciate that. Hope you guys are doing great. As always, if you have any questions, please submit them to dennis@dennisfenrich.com, and we will be talking with you guys really soon. All right, have an awesome week. Go get them, guys.